and dear stakeholders to this important, Trans Kalahari Corridor Management member states, that is Botswana, Namibia, the region as a whole, and the continent and the world have been devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the years, in economic development sectors such as trade, environment, and transport, amongst others. I mean, whatever you can think of, the pandemic. As a result, even some companies had to close down, scale down on their employment, even living with the skeletal staff. So people lost jobs. Achieved by the Trans Kalahari Corridor, Management Committee over the time, in terms of trade, dealt a blow. More so that we know that now we had quite a number of non-tariff barriers that we never had before, or resulting from the pandemic. That the COVID so had an impact on trade facilitation. Is confident, of course, that with the emergency of the vaccines, normalcy is happen. However, for economic recovery from the COVID-19 downturn to be meaningful and resilient, may seem to be destructive and wasteful, must be avoided. They yield better. Now, as we recover, we want to recover, but also build better. Should be designed to build back better by devising and behavioral changes that will reduce impact of resilience in the event that they occur. So this is what we want to try and achieve. This webinar today to try and look at those factors actually employ to actually be able to say we can build back better. Stakeholders, the government, decision makers, stakeholders to participate here with us so that we receive from the experts who can actually be able to help us can inform policy. The purpose of the event, therefore, is together decision and policy makers and key industry players to dialogue on states may employ to build back better, especially with emphasis on trade and facilitation. The theme of the webinar has building back better, sustainable and resilient economies post COVID. Like we already alluded to, our experts to come on this topic. We have Dr. Nomcebo Constance Talaba, Munnani from Botswana, and we have Gerosep from Namibia. I hope the name rightly. And with that, colleagues, I think we will discussion by inviting the first presenter to talk to us. The first presenter is Dr. University of Botswana. I don't know, Doctor, are you now with us? Have you managed to log on? Dr. Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Yes. Doctor is an economist with over 20 years experience acquired within the field of central banking and regional integration. He has worked for, among others, the Central Bank of Botswana, policy analysis, that BITPA, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, Botswana. He has consulted extensively for many organizations, including the United Nations, the Southern African Customs Union, the World Bank, the Botswana Ministry of Industry, Trade, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. He holds a PhD in economics from Lincoln in economics from the University of Manchester. Yes. Doctor, if you can also, switch on your video, so that if you have slides, also you can share your slides. Thank you.
Take it, you can see my slides.
Yes, we
see my slides.
Yes, we can see them. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll just share briefly to be asked to share my face.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
okay.
So I'm not in the normal attire that you would expect.
Yes.
So can you see any picture?
Not yet. Not yet. Because you are not on a nightgown.
That's it says your camera is not launched properly. Please check browser media settings.
Okay, no.
Just a minute again so that I get full screen.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Sustainable and resilient economies post-COVID 2019, and I'll be dealing with the case of in terms of what Botswana has done to try to become resilient is that the country has developed some key strategies. The one that I'll be talking about include the midterm review of the National Development Plan 11, Economic Stabilization Plan, and a medium-term recovery and transformation plan, as well as the informal sector recovery plan. In the case of Botswana, we normally talk of them in terms of a 5-year cycle of planning, where every 5 that is developed, and every development that takes place within the country, this 5-year plan. So within the 5-year plan, we have annual plans will be taken on a yearly basis, but drawing from the longer. What we do is we have what we call the midterm review to see just ones of its plans, whether the plans have borne any fruit or whether there are any amendments to make sure that the plan is brought on track. So the midterm review gives opportunity and change course if needed. So for the plan in the development trajectory of the country is the 11th plan. So in recent times, that was viewed. But what became apparent is that this plan was reviewed at Botswana. First, it was apparent that the growth for it had started slowing down, primarily because, as we know, the mining sector hadn't been doing very well. So you look at
can I just I don't know whether your slides are moving because you are still on this, we are still on the first slide. No, we have not moved.
Is it moving that side?
No,
let me try something else.
Yes.
Just a minute. Do full view. Is it moving now?
Yeah, not
without full view.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay. I was saying that in this times plan, it was apparent that the economy has been, the growth of the economy hasn't been as successful. From that graph, you can see that in the 70s, between 71 and 75, at around 18%. Obviously, we are starting from a very small base, so it was actually fast, as you may be aware. Botswana gained independence in 1966, so the first few years of independence after this, The 1990s growth started in patterns around or growth rates around 3 to 4% as we speak now. Impact, the growth was expected to go down to around negative 9%. That's not 10%, that's expectations. Now, what is to try to now say, what can we do to make sure that the economy goes back to high growth rates? In doing so, it's important that every sector of the economy has to participate. Also, we are just about to launch and run with the implementation of the midterm reviewed plan came into being. We suddenly had COVID-19, which changed the trajectory. And how did we change that trajectory? The country development and the economic recovery plan, these are essentially government-driven plans. The fiscal stimulus initiatives basically meant to stabilize the economy and also meant to accelerate post-COVID-19 recovery. Basically, we should be able to have we should be able to have transformation. Other plans that we have in sector, and I'll come back to those a bit later. The short-term economic stabilization on 2nd April 2020. That was immediately after our government realized that indeed something has to be done in short term. And the objective was to minimize basically on firms and households, and also to lay down the foundation for recovery once they have abated. We are a year into since that. We are still experiencing infections. And what were the key features of this short-term plan? Wage subsidy was to avoid retrenchments and ensure that households continue earning incomes. Remember, with those in that households will lose their incomes. So what happened was there was for citizen employees. In other words, companies were given 50% of their basics and contribute the other 50%, and the government would contribute other 50%. Botswana's companies that really needed help were failed needs. So the government offered a minimum of 1,000 pula per month, and that should be around 2,500 pula a month. But there were some companies should be registered for tax and sectors that have been identified as very vulnerable to the effects of COVID. Your small retail companies, your sectors of manufacturing, I should say. So the government set aside around 1 billion for that. Then there was a loan guarantee component which is what key to commercial banks, so that 80%, and it covered 80%. The businesses were offered that guarantee, so banks were comfortable. The companies, again, 1 billion was set aside for this, and each firm was to take a maximum of 25 million pula. Obviously, there would be, or there were other conditions to determine whether or not the company can take 25 million pula, but that was basically the maximum. Where there were VAT refunds in 21 days instead of the usual 60 days. Normally, companies will submit their VAT refunds decided instead of taking 60 days to process those VAT refunds. They now had to be processed in, and there was some deferrals in terms of tax, and 75% of investment tax obligations were deferred from September 2020 to March 2021. That is, companies were delayed, pay their taxes, or 25% of their taxes for a few months. From months, so that was meant to help cushion the companies of the effects of COVID-19. And we have quite a number of development agencies. This include the Citizen Entrepreneurial Development Agency. Two were seen. We have our Business Botswana Development Corporation as well, but these two were seen as companies or the country cope with COVID-19. So these institutions were missed, and they have since done so. I'll come back to those in a minute. And there was entailed provision of food relief support to affected and vulnerable households. Came up with some monetary policy instruments to help cushion the country against, and this was through reducing the bank rate from 4.75 to 4.25. The investment institutions, CEDA, or the Citizen Entrepreneurial Development Agency, developed what they called an emergency response, and included, for among others, restructuring of loans, rescheduling of loans, and provision of working, so that if one wants to go and get details, they can get those details there. And then NDB was to ensure that the different sectors have access to million pula was for agricultural sector, tourism 200 million, and agriculture are not required to pay any interest. General industry was given 300 million, and the interest there, again, we have a link there that one can have a look at. The other transformation plan, this is a bit of long term as opposed to the short term that I just talked about. And it had one being export-led growth, the second one improving the efficiency of government spending, the fourth one being investment in infrastructure and building the resilience, the last one. Now, in terms of export or coming up with whatever it takes to ensure that the economy or companies are, this includes, for among others, you're improving your doing business environment, diversification. This country has a what we call the economic diversification drive. That drive is under review. Export-led growth is achieved. Government spending ensuring that spending is only on high return, high impact projects, which means priority and is very important as we speak, especially given that resources have gone down since as it used to. Capital development of the human capital has to do with health, training, and skills development. And within education, training, a number identified to try to implement this. So I won't go into all of them. The objectives of this plan basically are that is, as we ensure that the economy diversifies, as we develop human, have in mind that every activity that is undertaken has a component of citizen economic empowerment. As and when companies are engaged, citizen participation is also very, very important and encouraged. We don't have a law, so being a citizen economic empowerment law or framework. It may be a law, whatever framework that the citizen participation in all the activities of the economy. That those of us who studied economics a few years ago, many years ago, we knew that, you know, there was always talk about opening up the economies. But if you look at economies around the world in recent times, they are moving towards import substitution again. And that is to say, why can't we produce products that we import? If it's possible, why not? So that's one of the objectives. We should also, in addition to that, because we import a lot from other countries, we should be able to actually look at Botswana's balance of payments. We import a lot more than we export diamonds, but especially consumables. We import a lot of consumables. So the objective with this plan is to export. And then economic resilience. If you look at what that, if you are not resilient, if you depend a lot on imports, oh. Okay.
Can I request our participants, please, so that we don't have any interruptions?
achieving economic resilience. And what COVID-19 showed Botswana was, if your economy is not resilient, once the borders are closed, as they were closed, it becomes very, very difficult for the economy to grow, extend those closures. Because even if you say we are going to open for foodstuffs, like it was, they were allowed to come in and out, but these truck drivers had to be tested, and would mean that after testing, results will take maybe around 48 hours. So the supplies were somehow, it showed that, as we develop the new plan, let's also bring in the concept of resilience, so well developed, and we can be resilient as an economy. If you talk about resilience, about economic diversification, because for you to be resilient, you should have a well diversified economy, a variety of item and produce, and at the same time, if there's a disruption in one of its economy, let's take in our case where if diamonds are affected, the Botswana economy is heavily revolves around diamonds. For the service sector to really make an impact of growth sector. So that relationship and dependence on diamonds has really and this plan also looks at that as well. And what are the strategies that will be economic clusters? Obviously, a diamond cluster is one of them. And what do we mean? Value addition is key in that regard, because we now realize that is important. And well, of course, we have long realized, but to really say, in terms of diamonds, there must be a lot more value addition. The agricultural sector and the financial sector, these clusters have been identified, and post-COVID-19, the economy can become more resilient. We have special economic zones authority, that zones within the country that will be developed. Digital transformation. As in the last 2 years, probably I'll be making this presentation from Namibia, but what you are transformation where technology is used a lot. So the plan also emphasize the concerted effort to make sure that digitally the economy its role cannot be underestimated, because as SMEs, as we know, they are both employers for employees, and so on. We have those that are run and by owners and employing owners, and also employing others. SMEs, together with informal sectors, are very resilient when it really, in most cases, come back and adjust quickly. Human capital, we cannot do this without having in place that will drive the plans forward. The business environment, doing business, Botswana hasn't been doing very well in that regard. In fact, in the last 5 to 6 years, but number 5 in the world, number 45 in the world, around number 87 in 2020. So you can see that we have been planning, it's also meant to invigorate the business environment and improve it. Obviously, infrastructure, telecommunications, your roads, your IT systems, also to make sure that we have well-developed infrastructure. Our power system has to be developed because in this power sector. The other one is the private sector recovery plan. I'll try to the private sector recovery plan has some specific strategic goals, some outcomes. The first goal is about saving cents. Take these funds away, so that once COVID-19 is addressed, we don't know when. So the outcome is that, you know, once you implement this plan, the private sector recovery plan, we protect these firms, and the country's productive capacity will be protected, and jobs will so aims to achieve global competitive private sector, because very important. And we hope we can do this by, as I noted, improving the business environment. I've talked about infrastructure, which is also captured within the private sector recovery plan. Construction can really assist in the transformation process, and we have efficient, make sure that our public sector is very, very efficient. Human capital between the government-owned recovery plan and the private sector-owned recovery plan. Common child development, things like private sector, infrastructure development, including that and making sure these firms are competitive going forward. So there's a link between these two strategy, the private sector development strategy, Business Botswana, which is private sector putting this plan. I know that they run and coordinate the implementation of this plan. It's too early to really assess the impact at this point in time. Last but one is the social protection recovery plan. In Botswana, traditionally, we have so many social safety net, group feeding program, which supports around 291,000 people. Your care, or labor intensive programs. We have destitute programs, disability and so forth. And during the COVID, government also introduced the COVID-19 relief food basket, which supported just over 400,000, 2.4 million people. So the COVID-19 relief package supported around 4, and that shows the many programs that we have. And these are programs that one can have a look at them at your own spare, and many such programs. Now, what does the plan say about this? Scattered all over, and sometimes it's difficult to really coordinate coordinate them and not complement each other. Sometimes you find that there's a bit of double dipping in the process, in that there should be consolidation of the existing programs with a view to improving the common system that we use, to the same systems for implementing the programs, but also to make sure that their objectives are aligned. And there will be resilience of the social protection system, so that any shock that comes into the economy does not the programs, and those that benefit from the programs that may come. The last one, recovery plan, you realize that we have social protection plan, which social side of things, we have the private sector recovery plan. There was a, what do we do about the informal sector? So we then developed the informal sector profile. In brief, you find the services sector is very dominant, as well the manufacturing sector. There was a study, I can't say haphazard, but perhaps have a quick view or a bit overview of how the lockdowns and closures of different facilities to combat what companies said in terms of income between April 2020, is where the lockdowns were at the highest impact, and April 2020 as a normal economy. So the businesses that were consulted, they lost around 5,000 pula. In other words, let me put it this way: 80% of businesses that they lost revenues of around 5,000 pula in 2020, as compared to a lot of these businesses, because these are small businesses. That's a lot of money. Some businesses would means those ones would have lost everything. Some 10,000 pula, which means they probably had lost 50% of their informal sector strategy. Developed two key strategic goals, or came up with two key strategic goals. First one being establishment of informal sector facilitation and structuralization of the informal sector. I won't go into all those recommendations, but establishment of facilitation structures is to develop or come up with a facilitation agency. This agency will be looking at specifically developing sector. And we have an organization that has been helping develop small and medium, and the government has identified this as a specialist informal sector facilitation agency that in the development of the informal sector. The other one is develop informal sector business intelligence system, and through the local enterprise authority. Like I say, I won't go into all this. Number two, economic resilience for the informal sector. The key one that I thought one can, of the stimulus scheme for the informal sector participants, because initially what happened in the sector strategy, or even the short-term strategy, assistance that was given was never. It's important that the stimulus scheme is recapitalized, but in this case, sector, the government has gone on to offer at 1,000 informal sector participants. That process is ongoing. Plan. There is issue about developing market access centers as well for the informal sector. Again, I won't go into all of them. In conclusion, a number of initiatives have been undertaken, and number of plans that have been put in place, but it's too early really to assess the performance of them. Are only around 6 months old, but there's hope that they will help the economy recover post COVID.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muna. Presentation. In fact, it was quite loaded, and I think we see that Botswana is ensure that if any eventuality like this can happen in the future, we are to be able to withstand. I think it's quite important because you mentioned the way of the slide and everything that we are talking about. That's what we want to see. And the emergency response fund that Botswana has employed, citizen economic empowerment, be able to say it can actually have we can have economy is to start to actually empower the citizens, which is quite important. And the private sector as well, the informal sector, because the informal sector is also we are saying the plan also intends also to recapitalize the informal sector, the stimulus for them also to remain resilient. Thank you for that. And what we plan to do is that we give you for comments and questions, so that we may presented by Dr. Munan. So I can see, I will see by the raise of your hands. Find where you can raise your hand. You can actually just come in and then introduce yourselves. But as you speak yourself, and then we take it from there. Thank you very much, Dr. Munan. And colleagues, you can come in for any. I see that we don't have any questions. No one is coming in. Oh, Doctor, I see Mr. Tuagai.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mpo, for the presentation, Doctor. I think to me, it seems a lot of, I'm not sure if maybe the people are aware of those, because I think once they are aware, governments to make sure that they help the government to help them better. That is number one. Now, appearing almost on each and every page, which is fine, but my is that for now we've been sitting with this COVID since March last year. We have gone through, now we are going through the third wave. Maybe we need to adapt. Maybe that's where resilience and adaptation have to come in. We need to adapt and find the way with the COVID, rather than think that it will pass and then we'll recover. My belief is that we need to, this tough situation. How? I don't know. But that's what I believe in. But I would like to think, and even the social things that the governments are doing, they're just enormous. And my belief is that I don't know how you're going to deal with the double dipping aspect, because it's very difficult, because the vulnerability, you are vulnerable, you are vulnerable. So you might require some food packages this side, as well as some, maybe a little bit of that on how to deal with it. But what I'm happy is that at least if you say we try to streamline all those issues, I think that is very, but thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the presentation.
I don't know if there's another comment before I give the good doctor to Dr. Munani. Maybe we'll okay. Sihoni.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the present. Have is although he didn't give the percentage of the current economic increase, how much has the growth from last year to like sort of like this financial year or end of this financial year in Botswana, if you can give us that indication. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's well articulated, and I'm so happy in what you, Botswana. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nozi. Dr. Munani, maybe you can come in. You can come in now.
For those comments, the question of whether people are I would agree with an argument that perhaps not everyone appreciates what the government is doing. Perhaps the government should enlightening people about what they are doing and what people stand to benefit. The two key plans of private sector recovery plan and the government plans, because these are the plans that can, even that there is economic diversification, there is citizen economic empowerment. We have stated in economic empowerment, the issue of resilience will be achieved. The objective of resilience comes in a small economy like Botswana. We find that the beneficiaries, which also brings in the issue, is it's quite possible that you find people who benefit from the system or from who have benefited from, because these are very enlightened people. So in terms of in that regard, again, adopting to COVID-19, it's been, fortunately, we still have lockdowns of some sort in the form of curfews. We just have curfew times being reviewed for the whole of March, 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. But last week they were reduced to 8 p.m., which shows that we still have difficulties in adapting. Perhaps there is a lot of education that has to be undertaken momentum in terms of educating people, because in the first few months there was the president appeared quite a number of times on TV to have gone down a bit now. So probably it's important that momentum really adopt. Double dipping, yeah, I agree with that. Maybe the bottom line. The challenge with double dipping is that people who should be in need, sometimes they lose out because of double dipping. Level of economic growth, the economy has really shrunk by around 5%, around 5%. The projections were 9%, but the actuals seem to fall in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Someone that I'm leaving out wanted to say something before I move to Namibia. No, thank you very much, Doctor. And I say that on strategic goal 2, economic resilience on the informal sector. There is build regional information sector production and service centers. Regional here we are referring to what? Botswana regional in terms of the region in terms of SADC. Just a quick.
Botswana regions.
Okay.
Basically, yes. But I must say there must be. If you look at places, there is that as well. If you look into the development of regional value chains.
Doctor, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, and I hope you will remain with us so that even at the end of the someone that might want to still take a bite on your presentation.
Thank
you. I hope you will remain here. You can share your presentation now, Doctor.
You already have it that side. You can share it with anybody.
No, yes, no, I'm saying and share. Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. We will now welcome Mr. Navel, who is an experienced transport economist from Namibia of development programs in the transport infrastructure sector, including and construction, aerodrome and runaway construction, non-motorized transport in the transport sector. Navel is passionate about infrastructure development in rural appraisal of infrastructure projects, financing, as well as money policy analysis. Navel has served as the national focal point for Namibia on the International Civil Aviation State Action Plan Initiative, where he successfully led the development of Namibia's first emissions reduction in international aviation. Concurrently, he served representing the transport sector and was a member of the Sustainable Urban Development Master Plan subcommittee. In 2018, he was awarded the prestigious Chevening Scholarship by the United Kingdom and obtained a Master's of Science degree in Transport Economics at the University of Leeds. The award for the most impactful, innovative Master's dissertation in 2019. International Road Federation Young Professionals Program and a member of the Chartered Institute of Transport. More recently, Navel joined the Ministry of Finance in Namibia as a senior economist in the Directorate of Public. We welcome you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm happy to be here and happy to give my presentation today. I think you mentioned.
Oh, is it 50? Oh, sorry, 5 years. I'm sorry.
We are not there quite yet. But if I will now turn off the video and project, I hope it will be seamless. Do you see my presentation?
Yes, you can see it.
Fully presented or?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, let me just increase that then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me on this platform. I am very grateful to be here. Building back and how we can build back the economies. In the case of Namibia, I will be focusing. I think that we can all agree that no economy can really thrive and survive, the backbone of any economy. And it is important that moving forward, we build on in terms of the bottlenecks that presented themselves within the transport sector and in the logistics sector are dealt with swiftly in moving forward and in building a more resilient and so I will walk you through the contents of my presentation for today. Starting with just an economy, what were some of the reactions from the government and how they handled. Then we'll look at some of the challenges facing the economy currently moving forward. And then to sector level, looking at transport itself, and then working through some of the opportunities that are COVID by the pandemic at this time. Then we'll touch on some of the strategy to build back, specifically speaking to the budget that was tabled this year by the Honorable Minister of Finance, President. Then we will finally end with looking at some key considerations moving forward, and then some key takeaways that we will conclude with. Economy. Pre-COVID, we do understand that Namibia was already in a recession since 2016 of the temporary stimulus from large construction and mining sector that had sort of eroded commodity prices for raw materials, as well as the severe drought that had hit the agricultural sector. Dealing with at the time from 2016. In fact, as a result, the emergency in 2019 due to the severity of the drought. And this was in an effort to get on board in terms of implementing mitigation measures to fight the drought per se, with the Office of the Prime Minister in terms of the disaster relief management. Even before COVID, the economy was not doing very well. So in terms of realize that the economy had already contracted in 2019. And when the pandemic hit Namibia, the economy further contracted by 7.3% in 2020. But growth is expected to pick up as estimated by the Bank of Namibia at 2% and 3.3% in 2022. So this will mostly be at the back of mineral exports that are expected global economic recovery after the pandemic. So as other countries in the region has done, and internationally as well, government declared several containment measures. As of 4th of March 2021, some of these measures from home initiatives and including the suspension of the parliament for 21 days. Now we have a curfew that is implemented. If I'm not mistaken, it is from 10 a.m. and ends at 5 a.m. In the morning. So that are some of the immediate closure of the border and certain points of entry. On the fiscal front, the government to shield and counter some of the effects of COVID-19. And this included dollars, which is about 4.25% of GDP. So the stimulus allocation to the health sector, of course, which necessitated the procurement of as well as the setup of additional infrastructure some of to wage subsidies for our sectors, as well as income grants.
Mr. Tlhabano Musi, please mute your mic.
As well as an income grant that was a once-off income grant that was instituted, that was for 7 Namibian dollars, particularly for those members of the society which are vulnerable, youth and unemployed members of the Namibian society. Further, this also supported guarantees from the central bank, interest for small loans and agricultural businesses as well as individuals. The deadlines, submission deadlines to allow for firms and individuals to creating that space. Furthermore, the central bank also operationalized the of the loan guarantee scheme. It was a facility that provided or was well in targeted capital to SME credit. So when we look at some of the small firms that were hard hit by the pandemic. On the monetary and as regional banks central banks had done, reduced the repo rate base points initially to a 3.5% in August. Since then, 250, a reduction of the repo rate to about 250 base points in total of emergency was declared. Furthermore, the bank also announced changes in the financial. These included allowing banks to grant payment moratoriums, payment holidays to firms sectors that were affected by the pandemic. So, moving now that we understand the impact that COVID had and the state's reaction to, which I commend the government as well for having done well. Challenges that Namibia faces is the increasing budget deficit. It has worsened from AP in 2019 to an estimated negative 12.5. So there is a significant increase in the national budget. Is the growing public debt. This has increased from 15 to 6.7, 67.6% of the GDP, expected by IMF estimates to increase to 72.7%. Estimates. So these two are primarily some of the biggest challenges that the Namibian economy are facing. COVID-19 vaccination rates also present a challenge because the sooner we can achieve herd immunity, the more we can have free movement of people and goods within the country and with our trading. The Ministry of Health had targeted to immunize about 2,500 up to date. From the latest figures that are from the 24th of March, about 7 workers have been inoculated or vaccinated, and this, as we see, opposed to the target. Some of the challenges there are the resistance, general public safety of the vaccinations. Another issue is also the vaccinations themselves. As we understand, all African countries are facing the delivery of final point in terms of the challenges Namibia is facing some of which regionally Botswana is one of Namibia's biggest trading partners, notwithstanding South Africa, the big in Africa, as well as China and Europe. So there are still some limitations as well as constraints in the transport sector with regards to the loaded. Now, looking specifically at the impact, the transport sector contracted by an estimated 20.3%, according to here we can see on the graph there that the transport sector next to the wholesale and retail was one of the sectors that were impacted the most. Also, the sector is now projecting positive growth in 2021 and a further 4%, pardon me, positive. And of course, we anticipate that the relaxation of travel restrictions and the rollout of further improve the performance of the sector, particularly relating to air transport and in trade. Now, looking at some of the key challenges, the supply side, various industries, of course, face challenges along the result of disruptions in the supply chains across SADC, of raw materials, lead time issues that were delayed, closures of course the airport, and working hours, equipment and labor shortages, and of course capacity constraints. Key entry points of the borders, specifically relating to freight and truck, were reduced to mitigate the spread of the virus, documentation that had to be presented by time limitation. I think perhaps expiry date of those COVID negative tests that were required at the border. So these were some of the as well as complicated border procedures, which I just elaborated on. On the demand side, of course, the travel can impact on the demand for transport, not only from sectors such as mining, but also export and import sectors as well. This also, on the demand side, there were challenges of bans on certain commodities that were banned. A few examples here of the impact on the sector line this year, which is not news, it was reported globally. And of course, the loss of revenue among the liquidation of Air Namibia. Another example is, of course, how the alcohol revenues of Trans Namib, which lost significant revenues there, which operations on their part, of course, which creates then a loss of there were numerous jobs that were lost in the sector as well. That we've mentioned. What are some of the opportunities that are presented then? First and foremost, quite important in this day and age, particularly the digitalization of the facilitation processes, as well as logistics transport, including freight. So using technology moving forward will build the resilience in our supply chains. It is to harmonize border systems across countries, to which the TKCS Secretariat, as well as in consolidating some of the facilitation procedures and documentation that are required between countries. Significant opportunity moving forward after COVID is the collaboration. Thanks to some of the immediate responses by the SADC Secretariat in terms of providing of freight and transport at a time that was really critical. But moving forward also from safety mechanisms and safety plans in order to foster and goods across borders. And also in order to improve knowledge sharing and alignment of regional integration. Greater investment where we can improve on. Transport is particularly when it comes to infrastructure, one needs to maintain, of course, over a long duration, also introducing safety mechanisms. I think we have seen recently some of the most a rail accident that happened in Swakopmund near the port, as well as similar incident. How do we invest in a safe, reliable, and efficient transport infrastructure? Implementation of the CFTA agreement, which will not only allow for greater across Africa, and which will present immense opportunities for the transport sector. Agreement that is to be implemented, which motivates the airlines from different African countries will have unrestricted across member states. This will greatly improve connectivity. I'm sure we are all aware of the challenges of how difficult, for example, here in Southern Africa to West Africa. So imagine how even more challenging good, or to procure a good from that side. So the CFTA most definitely presents significant opportunity in boosting the transport sector across not only Namibia, but the SADC member states. Looking at how the government intends to build better. In terms of the government strategy that was tabled by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Ipumbu Shimbi, focused on boosting risk of our discussion today. And what this means, or how the minister interpreted the essentials, distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine, which I've discussed, of course, supporting economic recovery, and of course, the continued provision of essential public services and mitigating drought. So of essential public services, transport is included in this regard as well. When looking at key priorities affecting the transport sector from the budget particularly, one of priorities is the implementation of a fiscal consolidation program, which has been implementing over the past 5 years or so. And this will private sector-led growth in the private. So this is intended to crowd in the private sector in deficit in a manner that will be sustainable and not add or raise further public debt. The second priority then is to look at mobilizing alternative forms of financing. This includes infrastructure development. And of course, looking at the budget that was allocated to, seen a 52% increase in the transport sector budget allocation from financial year 2021 to 2.9 billion in the coming financial year. The Investment Promotion and Development Board, which the Namibian presidency institute, is to foster and link foreign investment as well as local investment, the Namibian economy. And this is speaking particularly to mobilizing priority financing. Further, another strategy, Rambe Prosperity Plan. I think those of us who are familiar with Namibia, because this is the second plan following the Harambee Prosperity Plan 1. This new plan was launched, and it is the action plan of the government towards economic recovery and inclusive growth in Namibia. And pillar focuses on sustained investment in transportation with an effort. And when you look a bit deeper, you see that goal 3 of its position as a transport and logistics hub. In doing so, some of particularly those that also touch on the Trans Kalahari Corridor, which provide access, are to be finalized by 2025. These include the Swakopmund, the Okahanja-Windhoek Road Link, and the Windhoek-Hosea Kutako Airport Road Link, which then further. Another key priority, key KPI under this goal is renovations and upgrading of railway infrastructure to SADC standards by 2025. In building back better in terms of the transport sector. Another key key area of is the private sector-led approach. Here, the government aims to look at the sector to further develop the transport sector. Such a process, of which in the economic pillar are widely mentioned. Ministry of Finance is busy developing a PPP project pipeline, which aims to develop about 10 and more in the coming MTF, as well as the development of a public, which is to support the implementation of these projects. In terms of public-private project conceptualization and development are quite expensive and challenging. This is where developing a a project preparation fund is one way of government in developing projects that the private sector can assist. So, moving forward in terms of resilient and sustainable recovery for the considerations. Private investment, as I mentioned. So leveraging really the private sector capital. This will enable the government to capture some of the efficiency gains of the private, some of the innovations that the private sector can bring on, particularly in terms of the transport sector. There should be safe, reliable, and efficient transport provided. Sorry, thank you. Not only within Namibia, trade routes that connect to our neighbors. And some of the infrastructure that will be required is truck stops as well, and the development of economic hubs. And it is clearly understandable that under the current economic climate, another area or focus area is should be innovative technology, digitalization to improve sector performance. So with digitalization, greater productivity, efficiency, as well as safety. So we look at initiatives such as smart corridors, automated and real-time tracking. And these corridors provide with initiatives such as the monitoring of traffic to provide better data, traffic data in the order for sector players to make informed decisions with regards to business and trade. There's administration and procedures which reduce waiting time, which of transporting goods. Other areas of improvement of information between member states and between trading partners, which as well. And of course, quality infrastructure and safety enhancement measures that can be. Further to that, national and regional collaboration is a key area. And this does not only speak to science-based decision-making in terms of health protocols and procedures, but also in terms of collaboration between different institutions within Namibia, of Ministry of Trade and Industrialization, as well as the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Transport. How do these policies affect the movement of people and the movement of goods and transport, goods and services, and across Namibia's borders? So these are some of the important focus areas that we need to address. At least inclusive growth. So inclusive growth cannot happen without the involvement of youth and participation in the sector. We do understand and know from research that the transport sector is a male. Women are not fully represented in this sector. So how can we bring in society in order to participate fully and gainfully? Youth unemployment is, so how can we leverage skills and capacity building in the logistics and transport sector, participate and contribute? In conclusion, we now clearly understand that COVID-19 has highlighted and sustainable transport corridors. This is in order to avoid external shocks from pandemics such as COVID-19, and also to ensure continuously. Another key message here would be that the key backbone of economies globally, not only in SADC but in Namibia as well. And we understand that development, transport is a key sector which must build resilient and sustainability moving forward to deal with issues such as COVID-19. We also understand that government cannot build back stronger moving forward, and that we need to hold hands, particularly with the private sector. The private sector must continue to play a more central role in terms of leading development and moving forward. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Neville, for that. Yes, wonderful indeed. Yes, and put us to space with regard to the situation in Namibia, and what plans that Namibia is devising in order to try and build back better technology, which is quite key, because we know that we had quite a number of challenges, especially whereby human interaction is when we are saying it's quite key that human interaction is minimized. Boosting the resilience and recovery. This is key. The private sector investment, trade and investment, which are quite pet to build back better. And ladies and gentlemen, we have had a Neville, and now this is time for us and give comments. I will try to minimize, because our intention was to end by 12, and maybe receive one or two questions, and then we go to South Africa and South Africa has actually presented. But if there's one or two questions for now, let us receive those questions. I will see by the raise of hands if there are any questions. We want to unshare. Oh, yes, we have. No, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Right.
And
yes,
we can come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to give one or two mitigation. I think it was one of the issues which nevertheless the government of Namibia has done is to ensure that we minimizing the economy, we absorbed some of the shocks. You find that even when there was fluctuation in the fuel prices, we kept our fuel stable. The other aspect is one of the issues which maybe as the region we need to look at, moved from having just essential services, essential goods moving on our corridor, but some hindrance because there is no harmonization. Namibia says something, but Botswana and South Africa might have different adopt going forward because COVID might have some of the issues which are there. The issue of had made sure that we minimize the increase of that. I think some of them who our speakers have indicated, because the issue of harmonization of regulations is something which COVID have taught us that, and if we don't harmonize, we might have challenges when we are moving, when we are faced with some of this.
Thank you, Doctor. And you are right. Harmonization is key, and hence we are talk of actually move on. Harmonization is key, and because we are lost, we trade with one another. Hence, harmonization is key. Yes. Any other question? Neville, maybe you may want to respond to come in.
Yes, thank you for definitely some of those positive comments contributing. Harmonization is key, and you reiterated. This would enable it will enable Namibia as well as its neighbors and SADC to really fully capture some of the envisaged FTA. So I fully agree with Mr. Limbo's comments there. And,
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hand. Our program. Let me this time welcome Dr. From South Africa, Dr. Mashalaba holds a BCom degree and higher education and higher diploma in education from university. A BCom honors degree in economics from the University of in economics from the University of Eastern Illinois, and a PhD in environmental economics from in the US. Dr. Mashalaba lectured economics from both undergraduate its end date to July 2004. Amongst the administrative portfolios, she holds Economics Department and Acting Dean of Economic Sciences. In August 2004, she brought economic policy as a senior researcher and national treasurer in April 2005. And security budget public finance division. She joined in April 2009 and has been responsible for the development and review programs administered by the Incentive Development and Administration Division within DTI. Has enabled her to strengthen research capacity of the unit as well as building foundation for the. She has led and provided guidance in several evaluation studies for the incentive with the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation to conduct implementation evaluation studies. For her main role in both studies was chairperson for the steering committee. She has presented papers on and in the SAMEA. In addition to her role, she chaired and participated in several adjudication committees for incentive. The DTI as a member of DPME Evaluation Technical Working Group to other forums and or organizations such as international film festivals where she had. She was also appointed the acting deputy director general from 2013 to 31st March 2014, and was seconded to the president for 2017-18 financial year. Currently, she is the logistics and monitoring and evaluation in the spatial industrial development and economic, represents the department in SAIMA advisory board and other forums. We welcome you.
Thank you, Mr. Mpofu. Let me share my presentation. Presenting, how much time do I have? Still open.
15 minutes to every presenter, but let me note other presenters did not take 15 on time for you.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues, for. Can you see? Aibo, I'm the only one who can see. Go out and go to share. Okay. Oh, what did I do? I did something. That's few minutes.
No problem, Doctor.
Okay.
If you can just go now to slide. So slideshow. Yeah, that one.
Okay, I will try to be, because I was briefed.
Yes,
so
please.
when I was preparing, I tried to stick to as possible.
Okay.
But as a result, I've listened to my colleagues say that I really focused on the roadmap. And just to mention that as we had COVID in March coming in, South Africa didn't sleep packages on the 2nd of April, which covered mostly social assistance. My paper is not really based focusing on those, but South Africa in April term compared to other countries, even high income countries like Korea and Canada. And the strategy in South Africa is that most of these packages, recovery and reconstruction plan, they are implemented mostly sector focused, more responsible. So it will be more of a high level information than going down medium and micro analysis of the plan. This is what I'm looking at the introduction, and then I will briefly, and I will elaborate on and look at the priorities. And after doing that, I asked myself for the TKC, what are the potential benefits that can be. So the presentation is supposed not to be long, except that one can talk too much out of one point. Pre-COVID, South Africa was already in recession. It was already, it had experienced 2 quarters of recession. So the country was still looking at how it can improve, get out of the recession, but we got in deep. 2020, our economy contracted by 7.2%, and it was one of the hardest hit. So like all other countries, the response to the pandemic was linked to economic stimulus. The roadmap for South Africa in terms of economic recovery. This is what I'm going to discuss today. We also have support measures for implementing term budget policy statement, the annual budget, debt stabilization, consolidation. So what is the economic recovery Africa? It is what we call our roadmap, and it is aimed at stimulating equity. It has been developed in conjunction with its social partners, business, labor, and civil society on the 15th of October, 2020. So this was launched after we have stimulus or relief packages. Those relief packages really addressed ways credit guarantee, and support for SMMEs, etc. of this plan. Key to this is the job creation or job creation, and the plan focuses that targets an average annual economic. So hopefully it's a long-term plan, and over a decade we can reach that 3%. What are the key objectives of the plan? It is to create jobs and mass employment programs, which are sometimes referred to presidential standardized economy, focusing on small business and strengthening medium and large economic reforms, investment, investment ability of the state. What are the key priorities of the plan? 9 priorities for the plan, and they are linked to these objectives, basically. The 9 priorities basically is industrialize through localization, energy security, support for recovery and growth of tourism, cultural and creative industry, because they are linked to the objectives that are listed under priorities, basically. Is a key now because of the climate change, mass public employment intervention, strength economic interventions. We also have an A+ that will create these priorities. These include reviewing our resource mobilization and fight against corruption, strengthening capacity of communication and digital skills, digital economy, and then support for SMMEs and cooperatives and startup and innovation. We'll focus on building infrastructure, expanding electricity generation, allocating and supporting rapid industrialization and employment. At the same time, the government is modernizing resource networks, reducing barriers to entry, and increasing the institutional arrangement for the implementation of the plan is that the line departments programs. And on top of our line departments, we have cluster protection clusters, which cluster certain line departments so that there's an attempt to coordinate and reported mainly through the clusters, and then from the clusters they go straight to the president. But line departments are responsible for implementation. The work coordinated by the Presidential Advisory Technical Team and the national, all working closer to the economic cluster. As I said, that they are clusters that are responsible for economic specific government briefly to highlight what they focus. My presentation on these priorities will also touch on some by these through these priorities between October and the state of where part of the reporting is done. How does the budget this plan? Our medium-term budget policy statement, which comes up in October, normally South Africa, to begin the task of economic recovery. Central goal for the next 3 years, broad-based economic growth and to return the public finance to sustainable positions. In combination of all these efforts, all these reforms, can raise our economy over 3% over the next 10 years and create more than 1 million job infrastructure. Furthermore, to support recovery, Treasury responsible for the macroeconomic policies, fiscal, it is critical for the country that fiscal imbalance so that our fiscal debt widens. So key to that is increased vastly, especially after the government spending over or for the cost, all those mostly are funded through borrowing. So our debt is increasing. I think it is over 2 trillion. Debt is the job of national treasuries. By doing that, it is supporting the success or the implementation of the plan. Let me look at the priorities. Priority number 1 is infrastructure investment and delivery. So based on private investment, sector investment in the delivery of building broad private partnerships. It is also important to focus are prioritized to support long-term increase in the productive capacity of the economy. To the corridor, if we can be successful in our plan in modernizing the freight and public transport, I think the corridor will benefit, even if it's indirectly. Investment and infrastructure fund has been introduced by the current efforts to secure and unlock about 1 trillion rand of private investment. And government in years. Over the medium term, in the February budget, this fund has been. So the Investment and Infrastructure Office is located in the office. How important is critical is that all the reporting is done through all the residents. And then some progress that has been reported is that we have had about 340 billion in projects that was making the reporting in this SONA February. But the challenge for these defying bankable projects, and that is not easy. The government previous that are basically focusing on the development of bankable projects, but it takes time and more. So it's a real challenge to identify bankable projects. The second is industrialization through localization. I think one of my colleagues, I interpreted as localization when we're talking about protectionism, and previously we never mentioned some words like, with creative words like localization, in order to try and mitigate that. The massive growth in local production, productivity, and make South African export more competitive, which says that if we increase our localization, we'll be able, one way or the other, and at the same time make our export competitive. He is on the key value chains like construction, agro-processing, industrial inputs, transport, rolling forecast, and automobile, rail, and assembly components. Key or critical attention is what the country has been trying for some years, minerals. I think it is important that we know that as we really are strong, we export our minerals in their form, and when they come back, I read an article, a paper from my ex-minister, Dr. Davis, that was here citing an example that Ghana exported 10 billion worth of, but it was processed outside the country almost 10 times that value. So local beneficiation of minerals in South Africa has been priority, especially we have to build the minerals value chains. Will be used to maintain pipeline momentum in the short term. I mentioned the deserts that are along the TKC, especially affecting the member countries. That we have, I just forget the number of all, because we have those that are who have been having at least more than 6 active SEZs in South Africa. But we're designating and implementing others, because provinces, we have 9 provinces. Some 1, 2, some 1, 3, but the work is ongoing. Why I mentioned Tshwane SEZ, this SEZ is anchored basically on the automotive sector. Is Ford, who is going to increase its capacity. It's located in Tshwane. So a number of manufacturing activities within the region, and also facilitating industrial infrastructure, skills and technology transfer, value chains, opportunities, mining works well. But one of the challenges now that the government is working with all the how do we transport our export from Pretoria are demanded globally, as we have challenges on our corridors. If we think of by and using trucks instead of rail. So there are those challenges that are indirect or spillover effects if this can work. And Botswana, SEZ, which is also called Platinum Value SEZ in the Northwest Provinciation of Platinum Group Metals. So also, if it can be successful, it can in the TKC. So under this priority, another important and critical is to strengthen value chains, and strengthening value chains by developing master plans. So we have a number of sectors that are in the process of developing master plans. Some that has invested already 800 million to upgrade production and the South African million chickens within 1 week. But the challenge is who are the buyers? Where is the market? We have to say. So the president reported in February that 42 products that can be sourced locally, ranging from edible source, PPEs have been identified. These are identified localization. So there will be designation that will be finalized as we go on with the plan. The energy security, because the backbone of the success of this energy security in our country is and initiatives that are being taken by the government to try and unbundle and make all of you colleagues have heard about our load shedding stories and how we need to ESCOM efficient. So the implementation of the integrated resource, see that diversification of energy sources will also capacity for energy. As a progress from the once announced, now the request for proposals for 2,600 megawatts are out, and ESCOM progress to expedite its commercial technical processes. Recently, in the last 2 weeks, there's been announcement by the Minister of Minerals bids for emergency power expected to generate power from July 2022. So there is some I think it has been mentioned in one of my colleagues that gender equality and economic inclusion of women and youth is covering and reconstruction our economy. So the government has currently is gender mainstreaming in all aspects of the plan. Also all the strategic performance plans, in order that all departments must contribute to really gender equality. One critical important aspect in intervention is for women in public procurement. It's going to be a hard road, but doing it in phases will get somewhere to 40%. support for the recovery and growth of tourism, cultural and creative industry. I think I wish to part of what government has done after allocating money for this plan, all the money for stimulus packages, like there's been a there's a stimulus package for tourism, and SME funding has been improved to include villages and township in form of small sector transformation aimed at facilitating participation of Black people, especially women, shall also be facilitated. So there are interventions that have been developed to support this priority. Focus is to unlock both and creative industry, which have been defined. And TKC, if we can have this and benefit from this. 6 is green economy. Not much has been reported in terms of performance. The pursuit of green industrialization is the future, as it has more benefits and it guarantees electricity supply and also create green job opportunities. Mass public employment intervention. This cuts across all clusters of the government and EPW2 program and the implementation of presidential youth employment intervention. They are being beefed up. 100 billion has been earmarked for job creation and retention of cumulative 2.5 million direct jobs by end of 2021, hopefully. And 5, we have challenges as these are being implemented, people are being retrenched, hopeless. A number of specific initiatives to boost mass employment will be implemented across departments, and agriculture is going to create so many jobs, so one is going to create so many jobs, but it's a long list. For 21, the report is that 430 job opportunities of varying duration and 180,000 were in recruitment process by end of January. And priority 8, strengthening agriculture and food security. So the vulnerable farmers, and through the 50 million brand and expanded social grant was added. So this is April. Then in agriculture, there's a plan to create 117, especially in the fruits and other value crops. So some meat, red meat, fibers, grains, fruit and vegetables. There will be prioritized possibility of positivity of benefit for food security. I think last was launched by the IDC, which is one of our development agencies, to support image. Priority number 9 is more about the macroeconomic policy intervention. To be honest, the central bank has been playing a good role in terms of supporting the COVID caused by COVID, because there has been an accumulative, and now currently we're on 350-point basis. So our monetary policy has been and supported by some tax relief. So hopefully there will be some benefits in a. Furthermore, 12 billion in debt relief has been extended to over 120,000. Commercial banks have also granted 90-day payment holidays and Sukuma Relief Program and the South African Future Trust that are providing interest-free loan. Having all these initiatives and intervention is important. Monitoring and seeing how are we doing, and that we'll know maybe after a year. But was a small interest in some of these initiatives from the firms, financial institutions, but that's, we still have to see the impact of these interventions. So this is just an addition now under the macroeconomic, basically, and integrate economic activities of the SEZ. Just not. I miss some. Oh, okay. Oh, my heading is. What I have put in as my last slides, like what are the implications for the TKCs along the TKC? I mean, in all the member states, we'll get in these examples, logistics, finance, tourism, digital economies could be reaped here because there will be increased densification along the corridor, result of passenger numbers, and the corridor will be busy. Secondly, if we enhance road freight sector through the mechanisms such as PPP and South Africa implement BBBEE and implementing localization policies and work with relevant stakeholders such as associations. So if we can transform interventions, will also broaden participation of all the citizens, especially women and youth. It must broaden participation of all groups. The third, unidirectional and eliminate tendencies of protectionist strengthen stakeholder engagements and review. I think the last comment, look post-COVID, if there is a need to review policies, strategies, bilateral or trilateral agreements when necessary, but there is a need to go back to what we have before COVID. And I think there was an emphasis on the harmonization. And then let's also along the colleague rail-friendly traffic, such as bulk cargo off the road and back onto the railways. Thank you, colleagues, for giving me time to present my presentation.
No, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you, and we appreciate all the good work that has been put in South Africa is doing quite well and quite good to ensure that and come up with a resilient and sustainable economies. Thank you very much. And local beneficiation, which is quite important. Like the example that we given of gas, and then we get just a meager, income. But yet that we have to export it, you spend more, and the manufacturing industry that we're coming up with. You mentioned the Swane as well as Botswana. We believe that they're quite critical, especially when looking at the TKC and issues of which is quite critical, because when we believe that as a TKC, for us to actually achieve resilience, we should actually come up with corridor-based solutions, and no solutions, but should be the whole corridor, because what Namibia and impact Botswana will impact South Africa. But if we harmonize and come up with a corridor-based solution, you mentioned also, which are quite key, and I'm happy that we actually have now here the TK Rail coordinator that has been recently been appointed. They are also learning lessons as to the importance of rail as an addition to for us to actually say now we want to be resilient. All aspects of available, both in terms of road, in terms of rail, in terms of air, and all that. For that eloquent presentation, may I now invite a comment. I mean, and I will try by all means that probably let us try minutes to 1 o'clock, that at least by 1 o'clock we have 8 comments. You can show by the raise of hand if you have a comment, dear participants. Comments or questions? With raising the hand. Maybe they're tired. Or maybe it's also that they understood everything. Not, if there are no questions, I would like for the participation. Maybe before I give to Dr. Limbo, maybe just the presenters, just a minute each to round up that they might have, that they want to share with us. I don't know, Doctor. Anything that maybe you want to say with us, you share with us?
Unmute, Neville.
Maybe.
Thank
Neville?
you. I would like to say in my closing remarks that
Yes.
I think it's very encouraging to see TKC member states have initiated recovery plans and strategy to grow back better and more resilient, particularly with regards to earlier, the movement of goods, people, and which is a primary sector for all. We cannot move forward without private investment. We cannot move forward without inclusive growth. And gender balance or gender inclusion should also be involved. I think, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neville. Dr. And maybe you may also want to unshare your screen.
Thank you, Mr. Mpofu. I can see that we started with a number of people. People have left, but
Yes.
I say by Neville is that it's encouraging, but I guess maybe sometime in the future learned from this thing, and we should also share lessons learned in terms of success. At the interventions, they are almost similar because the approach, the focus economy, but in terms of implementation, you may have different implementation. Or sometimes this year in 2022, where impact and programs, we can have lessons learned, and how each country has built its monitoring environment, and we can share and learn from each other, and really harmonization. I think for doing, and it's also encouraged to know that all the member states really are looking forward. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor, for that. We are right indeed. And in fact, we come back again and see how far have we gone, and in terms of are we facing, and how can we mitigate against those challenges some of these we actually need to benchmark from one another, and as TKC will also endeavor to analyze where can we actually find harmony, and so that at meetings we can come up with proposals as to what is it that we can see that we can 3 member states, so that we can achieve growth, because it does, and Botswana or South Africa to lag behind, because we are interdependent. We share. We are one. We need to move together in that regard. Yes. With that, colleague Dr. Limbo to give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Me? I was told to
Yes, we
give
can hear you.
a vote of thanks on for TKC. Now, before I say that COVID is here to stay, I think it will take time to get out of this pandemic. Now, from that, I just wanted to quote one quote by Mayor Angelo, which says, if you can't change it, change the way we do things. We will take time, challenge of COVID. So the best chance we have to remain relevant, to remain alive. That said, I think I just want to start thinking. I will not thank everyone. Others will indirectly, but I would want to be specific by looking at, by thanking our speakers, 3 speakers. They were really very, very helpful in trying to sustainability and resilience during this difficult time. All the relevance experience from the 3 member states. I think we would want to thank them. That we give them the round of applause, but it's virtual, we cannot do that. The executive secretary, I think you have managed to, because you know when you have this virtual meeting, some people would stand up and go somewhere and come back, and then at least in, from the 3 speakers, I think was very, very helpful. And then maybe initiative and also hosting this important topic. The other things, I think your contribution. In fact, from the contribution, we've learned a lot of terms. We talked about innovative, over and above what was discussed. Minus innovation, we might be faced with the challenge that we cannot do anything for us. So another speaker, participant brought the word adoptive. We need to adopt because other challenges might come. So we might also want to have that. Lastly, I think I would want to thank everyone, the speakers, for having joined us. I think they will encourage that in future, so that we share this experience. This experience are very, very helpful for us to, we innovate, we become resilient. With those, I think I'm standing between lunch and picking up kids. I would just want to thank everyone, and back to the facilitator. Thank you.
And for you spoke very well, and represented, and colleagues, we are very, very grateful for your attendance, and whenever we invite you. We join, because these are to benefit us and benefit the member states, so come up with policies. We come up with the policies that we know that they can withstand. For the first time ever in my life, ever since I joined the TKC, somebody who has joined this, who has joined me in the meetings for the first time, that is my wife. I see she has also joined. And I thank for that. Yes, and unfortunately, she didn't show her video. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you are now invited for lunch.
Okay,
Let's go and enjoy lunch.
To drive to the secretariat.
Yeah, it's a bride.